President, we have a national emergency.
This is one of the things that we can shoot first and ask questions later. Normally you can't do that.
All of a sudden these trees started moving out of the way. They parted for me. And then I came out into this opening, and there where I saw Jesus Christ.
Back in 1927, an American socialist, Norman Thomas, 6 times candidate for president on the Socialist Party ticket, said the American people would never vote for socialism. But he said under the name of liberalism, the American people will adopt every fragment of the socialist program. He is more imminent.
James Madison, in 1788, speaking to the Virginia Convention, said, "Since the general civilization of mankind, I believe there are more instances of the abridgment of the freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachment of those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations."
When men were free.
Broadcasting live from a secret location buried deep below the earth, you're about to make a connection to the signs of the times. W. Dean Shook is live on the air right now.
Welcome into End Time News. I'm your host, W. Dean Shook. Thank you for being here. I appreciate all of you so very much. We have a very special program today. We're going to discuss if all religions follow the same God, no matter what time of year it is. This is going to be a program that's going to define this question. Before we start on that, I want to talk a little bit about the signs of the times that we're in. We are in some unprecedented times when end time prophecy is coming to pass in ways that have never been done before. So let's begin with a news story. From This Week magazine, China's leaders telling the People's Liberation Army to prepare for war. Over the last several months, Chinese leader Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party have repeatedly exhorted the People's Liberation Army to be ready to win a war. Xi has repeatedly called for greater military modernization, increased training, enhanced overall readiness of the Chinese Army, Navy, and Air Force. These repeated calls have alarmed China's neighbors from New Delhi to Washington. The question on everyone's mind is, what is all of this preparation for? Is the Chinese leadership preparing for something? Are they gearing up for a military operation or merely the option to carry one out? The Communist Party's message to prepare to win a war may seem bellicose. The government may be simply telling the military to stop making money on the side and just do their jobs. Another possibility is that Xi and the party are pushing for the Chinese military to adopt readiness levels on par with the Pentagon. You know, the U.S. military, which is frequently deployed around the world, often on short notice, trains to a relatively high standard. Much of a typical deployment, such as operating planes from an aircraft carrier flight deck, is dangerous work that can only be safely accomplished by training at a very high level of proficiency. Now, it's quite possible that China wants the military to achieve this skill level too, for no other reason, just to have it. This, on the face of it, does not imply aggressive intent, only a desire to be prepared militarily. Or is there more? We're told in Revelation 16:12 that a 200 million man army will come from the east to invade Israel. China has an army of 2.25 million with a reserve force of 800,000. Other Middle East nations have huge armies. These nations include Iran, which at the present time has an army that numbers 954,000. Pakistan has an army of 619,000 with a reserve of 528,000. Kazakhstan has an army of 65,000 with a reserve of 237,000. Now get this. India has an army of 1.4 million with a reserve force of 1.15 million. There's been a question of if these armies combined into one fighting force, could nuclear weapons be strong enough to defeat them? China has said they could send waves of 100,000 troops 20 times and still have 500,000 soldiers in reserve to do the cleanup. And if they did it from different strategic locations, an opposing military, even using nuclear weapons, could not nuke 20 different locations of a 100,000-man army all at once. China says it could overcome even a nuclear attack and win that war. And with North Korea being in the headlines lately, here's what Bloomberg says. While North Korea has kept Western defense officials guessing for years about a nuclear program that it may or may not ever use, the regime's ability to wage cyber war adds a new dimension to its standing. There is this image that North Korea never carries through on its threats. Senior research fellow on Northeast Asia at the Heritage Foundation said sometimes they do carry through. You can't always dismiss North Korea's threats as simply being words. North Korea has for decades tried to make up for its deteriorating conventional warfighting forces by developing nuclear bombs. They also developed ballistic missiles and long-range artillery. In recent years, it's added this elite group of hackers to its list of weapons. Let's look at a theory. For instance, an attack on the U.S. from North Korea. In theory, it could consist of a cyber attack that takes down our unprotected power grid. What if China and North Korea joined forces to launch a nuke or conventional attack on a nation that is totally in disarray from a downed power grid? Now, I'm not saying this is what they'll do. However, we as Americans cannot be complacent about the evil in this world, and neither can we be so arrogant to think that we can't be defeated. Now, when it talks about a 200 million man army in Revelation 16:12 that crosses the Euphrates to attack Israel, could Israel overcome an army of that size? Well, maybe not by itself, and maybe not even with the help of the United States. It's God who says in Zechariah 14:16 that the Lord will smite all of the people who have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet. Their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth, all while they stand. It's in Joel 2:30 that it says, I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. Matthew 24:22 tells us, and except those days should be shortened, there would be no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. There has never, in recorded history, been a time when these end-time prophecies were even possible. Right now, we see the means for every one of these to come to pass. What else, besides a nuclear weapon, could do these things? The pillars of smoke, eyes and tongues melting away as they stand, no flesh being saved without God's intervention. My friends, we are living in unprecedented times. And what about Islam? What about this one world religion? There have been caliphates in the past. For those of you that don't know, a caliphate is an Islamic push to make the whole world come under Muslim rule. Well, according to WND, Sister Hatun Dogan has a chill in her spine that could only be felt at a time of war. The Orthodox Christian nun feels it with every new atrocity committed against the Yazidi and Christian minorities of Syria and Iraq. She feels it in the church burnings across Egypt and the slaughter of innocent children in Pakistan. For this reason, she brought a word of warning to Americans in a visit last week to Minnesota, where she spoke to several church groups. She said today's political climate draws her back to 1950 and her native Turkey, when her family experienced the cruelty of the Ottoman Caliphate, which slaughtered 3 million Christians, and it reduced others to second-class status under Islamic subjugation. She says ISIS is nothing new, just the re-emergence of Islam's dark side. ISIS is not fanatic. ISIS is not more terrible. ISIS is real Islam. Believers who like to follow the Quran and Muhammad. Others say they are Muslim. They say they believe the Quran, but they don't follow it. American Christians accounted for about half of the 3 million victims in Turkey. The other half were Christians of various ethnic backgrounds, Greek Orthodox, Syrian Orthodox, Protestants, but they all felt the boot of jihad against their heads. She believes that Christians in the West should learn what is written in the Muslims' holy book. If they did, they would realize the Islamic State is not doing anything it hasn't done in the past by devout Muslims who have conquered a people they see as infidels. Now, what's important is there seems to be a sort of acceptance of Islam by government, especially Western governments, because Islam is using our own freedoms against us to gain power. They're doing what they said they would do, and they said it plainly. We will destroy you from within. This is the death by 1,000 cuts. And Western nations are allowing it. Here in America, governments at all levels are pushing Christianity out. They're building things like prayer rooms for Muslims, taking the real God, Elohim, out of every aspect of our lives, even going as far as to try to change history to avoid America looking like a Christian nation. And what's really puzzling is even with the mass beheadings, a total stripping away of even basic rights for women, the murder of kids, cutting them in half, beheading kids as young as 6 years old, putting their heads on a stick in a local park all throughout the Middle East, people still seem to stick to the narrative that Islam is a religion of peace and these are just a few radical fundamentalists. And when we're told that we have nothing to worry about because these fundamentalists are less than 1% of all Muslims, well, look, it only takes some simple 5th grade math to calculate that less than 1% of 1.4 billion Muslims is roughly 10 million. And I think we all know that that percentage is a low calculation from Muslim sympathizers. So let's go with their number and say 1%. Does it make you feel any safer knowing it's only 10 million of these people who are out there that want to cut off your head and the head of every member of your family? So with today's global climate being so different than any other time in the past, we have to ask, what if they have some measure of success? Could they be the one world religion that joins with the Antichrist, driving any surviving Christians underground? Jesus says in the last days you'll be hated by all nations for my name's sake, that you'll be delivered up to be killed. Fact is, Christians throughout the world, especially the Middle East and Africa, are being killed by the hundreds every single day for their faith. And these are Christians who are looking evil in the face and still refusing to renounce their faith in God, knowing they're about to be killed. This is always a popularity in the ecumenical movement. This ecumenical movement is really a Catholic concept that goes back almost 1,700 years. And that's the idea that all religions are worshiping the same God. Therefore, anyone who believes in God will be saved. But if that's the case, if all religions worship the same God, how would this idea square with a one-world religion? If we all follow the same God, like this ecumenical movement says, then wouldn't that mean that we've always been a one-world religion? All religions, one God? There's only one way for this one-world religion that's described in the Bible to be true. And that's the fact that we do not all worship the same God. Because if we did, there would be no divide. In order to help us understand this concept, I have a recorded interview with IQ al-Rassooli. He was interviewed by the Glazov gang. Al-Rassooli is an Iraqi native whose first language is Aramaic. He was raised in Iraq in a secular home. He was neither Christian nor Muslim. In his search for the truth of God, he studied the Quran and the Bible. And what he found when he compared the two is astonishing. I'm going to play this interview. Now remember, his first language is Aramaic, so at times you have to listen close. But this interview will change the way you think about the God of Islam and the God of the Bible. I'll be back after this interview. Prepare to be amazed.